We opened the Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting at 6:15 and then went into executive session. On the executive session, we discussed an item in which we had voted to extend Chief Norm Clark's, I think he's here, contract until July 18th of this year. That was an 18-day extension. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it acknowledges that Norm has been working for the town for 43 years, longer than most of us have been. And so that's been signed, and then we'll just have to keep track of you after the 17th, Norm.
Good luck.
We also then met to discuss contract strategy in preparation for negotiations of non-union personnel. And these include discussions regarding the police chief and finance director. Those discussions, we asked for some additional information, and that discussion will continue. Moving then into open session again. As required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will video and audio tape, be taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. See no interest in that. I ask you to join me in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving next to weekly briefing, and as our standing agenda item now, Joe will talk about wastewater and sewers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First update is for Phase 2, work being done under Contract 1, which is Robert B. Auer. The 1 week look ahead for this week of February 24th. They're commencing a gravity sewer installation on Alexander Chase, as well as doing work around the area of 137 and Route 39. Mainline sewer crew number 2 continues work on Route 137. Next week, the sewer crew number 1 will continue on Alexander Chase, then Hall's Path, and then going again to 137 and Route 39. Crew number 2 would now be moving on Route 137, and they are expected next week, the week of March 7th, to be working through the intersection of Route 137 and Route 39 for a portion of next week. And again, all the work around Route 137 still necessitates the detours. Their 3rd week look ahead for the week of March 9th. They will continue on Hall's Path, then move to Chris Joe Beth and continue working with the subcontractors around 137 and 39, and continue with crew number 2 on Route 137. Again, detour is still in place. Contract number 2 is the work being done by RJV. This week they are focused on Southwest Drive, and their work is necessitating road closure of 137, between 137 and Church Street. That work on Southwest Drive will continue the week of March 2nd, and then the week of March 9th, they will finish up on Southwest Drive. They will progress to Northeast Drive, and their second crew will be put into operation, and they'll work on Church Street. So for that week, there'll be detours between 137 and Church Street, and then the second crew will impact Bay Road and Queen Anne, or Bay Road near Queen Anne.
Any questions for Joe? Anyone in the audience have questions for Joe? This is getting very close to me. I live on Northeast Drive, and so I can hardly wait to find other ways to get in and out of the neighborhood. Moving then to public comments. Announcements. This may be the shortest meeting we're going to. I'm looking at Carolyn. This is unusual. Our next on the agenda is a public presentation, public hearing rather, vote to modify the Beachlight LLC, is known as the Seal Pub and Cafe Entertainment License. Joe, you want to discuss this?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. As the board may recall, this is actually under a public hearing to modify the entertainment license for Seal Pub Cafe. The board may recall back on, I believe it was, let me see here, the end of January, the board had approved an entertainment license for Beach Light LLC, doing business as the Seal Pub and Cafe. Again, they took over the establishment formerly known as Red's. Their application was for recorded or live music with use of amplification, but they requested to be conducted on weekdays between 6 a.m. and 1 a.m. specifically for recorded music, acoustic live music, and karaoke. The board had raised some questions about that, and the board's vote was to grant the license consistent with the recommendation of our police chief. You can see you have a memorandum from the chief to the board dated February 5th, where the police department is asking that the license go until midnight with an overall stop time at 1 a.m. Because it was done at a hearing, any correction to the license has to be done in this manner of a public hearing. Earlier today, I met with the police chief, the deputy police chief, and the manager of record, Bob Young. I don't know if Mr. Young's here yet. He indicated he may come before the board to plead his case and argue for a later entertainment license. In any event, this is a required action if the board wants to issue the entertainment license to cease at midnight rather than 1 a.m.
Any other comments? Michael?
No, I think if there's no comments from the public, I'd vote to close the public hearing, but.
Is there a second? Is there any comments, any questions from the
All right, so I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
second? Michael?
No, just vote. Vote
Yeah.
to vote to close it. We haven't
All in
taken-
favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's closed. We'll look then at the public. Michael?
So I move that we modify Beach Light LLC, DBA The Seal Pub and Cafe license from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., or from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Is there a second?
No?
No second?
Trying to find.
I'll entertain a second. At least let's just discuss it.
Sure, I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, Ed. Well, as looking this up, I was not here last week, but I know previous to that, we had some concern about moving this to 1 p.m., 1 a.m. rather, as not being consistent with the hours we've issued, trying to stick to throughout the town, and felt that we should stay with that.
So those are the hours that are used for the other
Right,
establishments?
yeah.
If I can just advise
It
the
was
board,
the attempt was to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
if I can advise the board, the request to come in from the manager of the establishment as to what the prior establishment had, and I can confirm that Red's was held to a midnight license as well.
Okay.
So it's consistent for that property at least.
Is there more discussion, Ed, you want to,
Well, yes,
comment?
my comment is trying to find in their application where their entertainment's going to occur. Is it going to be all interior or,
All inside,
all inside?
inside license.
you know?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, stopping, live music for some sort of karaoke, but not being able to have recorded music until closing seems, I don't know, anyway.
Yeah.
But
Michael?
I don't know how we.
Yeah.
The police chief's here, maybe we could hear from the police chief. I mean,
Yeah.
this was a topic that we discussed a couple of years ago, and then again last year, and the police chief felt strongly that for his officers, that it was better if they stopped at 12 to start to clear the place out, rather than at 1 a.m.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is true, Michael. That was in 2016 when we were talking about the regulations, the entertainment license regulations. I was asked my opinion, and I had stated that, you know, we had had an incident where we actually had a place that was pretty much out of control right at 1 AM, with live entertainment still going on. So I had asked for the 1-hour cooling down period. That's where that came from. That was my opinion. We had a good meeting with Mr. Young. I understand his opinion and his approach. And, you know, there is a difference between live entertainment and recorded music. However, you know, if you get a DJ going, that could be almost the same or worse than a live band, karaoke, I don't know. So that was my opinion that at the time, and I believe it, you know, I would have to stick with it, that a 1-hour cooling down period is appropriate in order to maintain control of the establishments across the board and maintain uniformity. You know, if the board wanted to consider something about, you know, mentioning in the regulations simply background music, you know, as like
Yeah.
you're talking about, I wouldn't have a problem with that. It was more about maintaining control.
Yeah, I'd sort of consider a DJ as live music,
Okay.
because,
Yeah.
you know, rarely you find a DJ that just puts a platter on and lets it go. They're screwing around with it and making it shriek and all of that stuff. But it also, other establishments around town that have exterior venues, they're closed at, shut down at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct, yeah, that was.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I would like to stick with this because we can get a little too cute and a little bit too nuanced to be able to enforce anything if we're not careful, so. Steve?
But I think as you pointed out earlier, I mean, if we don't have consistency between the establishments, we're just opening it up for, you know, people to bring that up as a point, and it's a legitimate point.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you can't ask one to do what the other doesn't do, so.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Steve. Anyone from the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous then, we'll move on. Thank you. New business, the first item was confirmation vote to amend the fire chief's contract. I announced that earlier because we voted on executive session, so that's been done. Second item is the meeting from the Noise Containment Committee. And before you even get started, thank you very much for taking this on.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me take it on. Good evening. My name is Angela McNamara, and I'm the chair of the Harwich and Harwichport Noise Containment Committee. And I'm joined with the vice chair, Bob Cohen. I've got Walter Mason here, Fran Rich, and Cindy Williams from the chamber. I'd like to start out by thanking the chief and the deputy chief and Mike McCaskill for always being there for us. It's been great. Any questions we've had, they've, you know, really gotten back to us very quickly, and I really do appreciate that, being new to this type of situation. We also do have some other members of the committee that are not here. Jake Domos, he represents the Port and Ember. We have Heather Murphy from Murphy's General Store. And is that everybody? That's it, okay. So, moving right along. I want to say that attendance by committee members has been excellent. There are currently no openings on the committee. Meetings and agendas are or will be posted. We've had a total of 10 meetings, 5 of which there's been public participation. We've met with local business owners as well as concerned residents who have participated in our discussions, as well as contributed to our understanding of the issues that led to this committee formation. Emails and letters received by the committee have been read into our meeting agendas. There are many issues brought forward to the committee, but after several months or so of lengthy discussion, we narrowed those concerns down to the following: the volume of the music, violation timeline, what is plainly audible, reduction in residents' involvement in enforcement, and improving communication between affected residents and business owners. We then moved on to discussing possible solutions to the above. Number one was defining what is plainly audible. 2, should we require decimal meters for outdoor entertainment? 3, noise mitigation techniques, for example, speaker placement and sound barriers. 4, swifter review and penalties for a business should they receive a noise violation. Possibly a 2-tiered sanction system, whereas the business owner could, if they agree there's been a noise violation, can immediately accept and serve their sanction, or they could opt to move forward with a formal hearing with the selectmen. I'd like to thank Mr. Bob Nickerson for that excellent suggestion. 5, improve self-policing by business owners. And 6, we're looking into ways to improve communication between business owners and residents. We've had spirited debate on the topics at hand and have not come to any definitive or satisfactory conclusions for business owners and residents, although I feel we have made progress, identified what might be workable solutions, and found commonality in several areas. Our major sticking point is defining what is plainly audible. Do we keep the current definition as it is in the town bylaws, or do we redefine it? We'll continue to work on this point of contention as well as other areas. In closing, I would like to thank the Board of Selectmen. I would like the Board of Selectmen to know that the owners of Ember, the Port, and Perks have been very forthcoming in their desire to be part of the conversation and solution. I would also like to add, we might not always agree, but the residents that took the time to be involved in the process have been wonderful to work with. And that's our little brief synopsis of what we've been doing for the past several months.
Thank you. 10 meetings is a big, this is a tough topic to discuss.
Well, we're coming to a consensus, and I think everybody's trying to come together on this. I mean, we're all residents here, and we don't want upset residents, and we don't want people to be stressed out about their business because they're residents also.
Sounds like you've done a great job. If nothing else, you've identified some issues to look at,
Yep.
and that's
So,
a big start.
We'll see where we
There'll
go.
be some compromise. Before you sit down, let me ask you those other questions. Michael, you've been very involved. You want to
No, I
comment?
just want to thank the committee, all members of the committee, past and present. I think you've done a great job. I do agree that the residents have been very involved in the process. There is definitely some contention on some of the issues. I think the board really needs to start diving into the definition of plainly audible with the chief. I think that that's going to be a major sticking point. I do agree that the punishments took a long time last year, and I think that was a great source of frustration for the public. So I do agree that we need to work on that. I know that they've proposed or internally proposed some of those punishments, so they're still working on that. This has not been easy. This is probably one of our tougher committees, but I do think we have a good, a fair and balanced group, and thank you.
I do have one question. Your comment about, increased interaction between the businesses in the neighborhood. Have you given that some more thought about, monthly meetings or some more formal?
Not really.
Topics
I mean,
to get
it's
together?
summertime, and people don't want to, get involved, I think, monthly meetings or
Right.
anything like that. I think what we're really looking forward to is that having the residents feel like they can have a contact person at a business if they think that the music or the noise is too loud, and that someone would pick up and listen to their complaint and act on it instead of calling directly to the police department and getting them involved. Kind of make it more informal. We've been looking at several different ways of doing that. We haven't come to consensus on it. We did look at an app that Mr. Cohn brought in, but it did require a monthly administrative fee and that kind of thing. So we're also looking at dedicated phone lines, a resident could call, those types of things.
Yeah.
Kind of more informal
That's
rather than formal.
a big point, isn't it? Informal, that people feel comfortable
Yeah.
going back and forth.
And you don't want to have people have to come to a monthly meeting, especially in the summertime. You've got friends, family, things going on. So we're trying to make it a little easier
Okay,
for those
thank you.
involved.
Anyone else from the board want to comment? Steve?
Do you have a sense of if it could be before the season when you guys might have recommendations?
By March 31st.
Okay,
For our charge, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone from the audience? Bob?
You knew I was going to show up. So, Bob Nickerson, Harwich Port. So let me just, I have a memorandum, and I'm willing to share it with anybody that wants to see it afterwards. So First, I want to extend my appreciation to the Noise Committee for their effort in recommending solutions to the BOS that would improve the current situation related to outside music in Harwich by venues with entertainment licenses. Over the past 6 months, there's been a great deal of discussion and possible solutions proposed that might result in meeting entertainment license and noise limitation requirements. So a recap, I want to kind of recap the liquor license regulation, section 109E, outside entertainment. Noise from entertainment must be at reasonable sound levels, which are not plainly audible at a distance of 150 feet from boundary line or source of sound amplification system, whichever is further. Okay? So since it was unclear on what the group will present, I felt I needed to present some points that I feel you need to be aware of, since in the end, the Board of Selectmen actually are going to make the final decisions on what is changed in the regulations. So I say, since it's unclear the ad hoc, what solutions the ad hoc committee will recommend, and with limitations on public input during the meetings, I thought it prudent to provide suggestions directly to the BOS, since the final decision on any changes to the liquor license, is under your purview. I applaud the Noise Committee in identifying possible solutions that venues might employ to meet plainly audible noise requirement. I suggest the committee summarize this information into a document with references, if available, to be shared with any venue interested in this document. The document would not be all-inclusive, but provide possible solutions the venues may want to employ. I personally would not suggest the town dictate solutions. I think the onus to meet the noise limits is on the venue, but they've done a really good job of getting all these different possible solutions. So what are the key issues? My point, right? Maybe not theirs. Consistency by the officers in the determination if a violation occurred, elapsed time and effort in final determination of violation, and consistency on how violations will be treated. So let's talk over the first one. With great respect for the chief, I know it's a struggle to get consistency in defining audible noise. Currently, the standard has been knowing the words to the song. In my opinion, knowing the words to a song has nothing to do with noise volume and if it's audible. I disagree with this approach and suggest that a more consistent method to monitor volume limits need to be in place. It has been suggested that an example would be of value to both the officers and the venues. One such example that has been discussed, probably at length, is if the sound source under investigation is sound amplification, the detection of the rhythmic bass component of the music is sufficient to verify plainly audible sound. Okay, so that's one definition. I'm not saying that's the one you use, but I think we need something that the chief can hang his hat on and everybody sees it. So the person need not determine the title to the specific words of the song in that case. I think that's a challenge, but I think that's a key issue of this solution. The second is monitoring, consistently monitoring audible noise. As noted, the entertainment license plainly audible at distance 150 feet. This distance, which currently is defined as either from the source or boundary, creating a perimeter in which the audible noise limit is not applicable. However, if the owner has property both inside and outside this perimeter, a violation can occur on said property. This is very important. This is a very important clarification. It's a number of residential properties within Harwich could meet this criterion. So the officer must consider, is the entire property within the 150-foot audible noise? And this is really important to people close to venues downtown, because they're in their backyard, they're more than 150 feet. Sometimes the officer says, okay, you're at 150 feet at your edge of your property and you're not included. I think that needs to be clarified. Elapsed time in the final determination of violation. The current path for issuing a violation, I may not have this perfectly right, as I understand it, is a verbal notification by the officer when the violation occurred, written report to the case file, a letter from Lieutenant John Sullivan informing the owner of the violation. All this documentation is sent to you, the BOS, for a decision on who the hearing officer will be, scheduling the hearing normally with legal counsel by the town and the venue, and the memo determining the decision of the hearing with penalty defined. Elapsed time, 4 to 6 months right now. We have one coming up in 2 days another one in 2 weeks, okay? Proposed alternate procedure. I defined this out because I did share it with the noise committee, but there's limited time for me to talk, so I can't really explain what I was trying to get, so I thought it would be valuable to share that. The following is a proposed alternate procedure that provides benefits to the police, venue, and residents. The concept is a fast-track violation process that has clearly defined penalties. It is envisioned this would become part of the liquor license regulations. Draft procedure. Violation occurs, officer informs the venue manager, officer writes up the case report, police sends a letter, email if possible, to the venue informing the acceptance, informing them of the violation within 2 days. The venue then has the option of a hearing, same process they're in now, or to accept the violation within 3 days. The key to this process is less stringent violations, fast-tracking the process, relief to the police and town administrator as hearing officer, significantly reducing their paperwork and man hours. Elapsed time could be done in 1 week, okay? So, violations to be to be determined. I would assume Chief Gilmet and whomever he recommends from his department, the town administrator, who's normally the hearing officer, the BOS, would formulate an ascending set of more stringent violations. I would anticipate that at some limit, the fast-track process would no longer be an option, and a hearing would have to be held, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 violations might be on the fast track, but you get to a certain point, you got to go to the hearing because they're not following the rules, okay? Benefit to this approach, timely response to the violation. All parties, BOS, police, town administrator, venues, resident, know exactly what the violations are before they accept them, right off the bat. 1 day off, whatever you guys decide. Not unlike a speeding ticket. You know the penalty. Thanks for your time.
Bob, I assume you've given the memo to the
I have not.
the
I
committee?
have copies to give to all of
And
them.
could you give one
and to
to,
all of you, actually all of you if you want.
We'll put it in our packet. Michael,
That's what I was gonna ask for, if I could get a copy of
give me a
that.
copy.
Thank you, Don.
Just to, if I may comment, good suggestions. My personal opinion, not speaking for, is I like where this discussion is going because we're looking at first line of action as being informal discussions. And I like that because we are all one town. We should be working together. And then you've come to us with some then backup, if I can use that term, of what happens if that doesn't work. And so there's some more work to do, but it's a great discussion going in, at least for me, that template works really well.
Well, I didn't bring this up to override what they're trying to do, but it's difficult to have a communication with them because we have a very short time frame of public comment.
I didn't suggest that. I'm suggesting they sort of roll together in my mind in some ways.
Right. Okay.
Any other comment here? Anyone else from the audience? I guess you don't let your rest of your committee talk, right?
Thank you.
If not, thanks again, and we appreciate, and we look forward, as Steve's asked, for a report then, and some further discussion on these issues.
The chair is practicing noise containment.
Moving next then is item C, is vote to transfer the seasonal alcoholic liquor license. Michael?
I move that we approve the transfer of seasonal all alcohol liquor license from 10 Yen LLC, DBA 10 Yen, manager Michael Jasek, to 554 Street Bar LLC, LBD, 3 Monkeys, manager Michael Jasek.
Second.
Okay, we've had, Michael, I assume you're here to talk on this subject.
Yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. Happy to talk as much or as little as you'd like.
Well, we don't want to talk too long, Michael, so we'll.
Perfect. Perfect.
Are there any questions for Michael? Look fairly straightforward to me. Any discussion? Joe, you want to
Just
comment?
that you'll see the first item is to actually transfer the seasonal license from one establishment to the next, and then based on that, allow them to alter the premises under the new company name.
Right. Yeah, got that. Anyone else? Anyone,
Currently, how many seating is currently allowed?
We have 71 seats in total after the transformation. Prior,
Okay.
we had 40.
Okay.
This is including the
Because
former
I-
Bucky's space, which
Right,
was
you're
not
combining
occupied.
spaces, right?
Exactly, so it's 40 extra seats in total, but we're actually taking over that space, which is much bigger than 10 yen, so per square foot, the seating is actually less.
And I see you still retain the seats, tables outside,
Correct.
same
correct.
number outside.
Yes.
So the number outside goes from previously, so before we were just at 10 yen and then the outside of Bucky's, we've taken the front space at Cranberry Jewelers as well. So we have that whole front brick area. It goes from 20 to 34 in total outside.
So this is item D as well, right? Yeah, we've moved from C to D.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because in item C, which is the transfer of ownership, as you are currently, I believe the number of seats you list that you currently have is 71, which is you currently have 40.
Correct, so
So-
we're applying for 71.
Okay, but that's the next application, not the first one.
Yeah, you
it
probably know
just-
better than I, yeah.
Still confusing, but
Yeah,
we have two
yeah,
applications.
Okay.
Any more questions, or anyone from the audience care to comment, question? We're on item C, I'll entertain a motion.
I already made it. And
Okay,
it's been
it's
seconded.
been second, okay. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Michael?
I move that we approve the application for alteration of premises to 554 Street Bar LLC, DBA Three Monkeys, manager Michael Jasek.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions? Joe?
I'll defer to the member first, Mr. Chairman.
Ed?
Yeah, on the diagrams you submit, the reconfigured, I don't exactly know what the configuration is now, but on the floor plan, where are restrooms for the
So-
staff and/or the public?
So restrooms are actually behind the, if you're familiar with the building, there's communal restrooms between what's right now Snow Goose and 10 yen for the use of the building.
Between Snow Goose and 10 yen?
Yeah, they're technically within the, we pay a triple net in order to keep them maintained to the building's owner.
Okay.
So we don't really have too much of a hand in the restrooms, but per the Board of Health, they're more than enough to satisfy the seating.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, because they are part of the premises, that if, you know, we can approve it tonight, but I'd like you to submit an updated floor plan showing where the restrooms are and the access.
Like an egress plan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Which you have to do for the Board of Health and the
We've
planning
already, yeah,
department
we've actually
and
already
the building
submitted the,
department.
Yeah.
submitted
So we
those,
already
so-
have those on file,
Somewhere in the town, yeah.
so we could get those from staff.
Yeah, yeah.
But the restroom, we didn't put a restroom on any of the blueprints, so we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Any other questions? If, anyone from the audience? Joe?
Just to state, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Jasek and his partners came before the Community Development Team several months ago. They've been working through the regulatory bodies for all their improvements, for all their approvals, I should say. And I do want to point out that I think it's particularly helpful to the town, the manner in which they've done the outside seating. It's a very well-defined licensed establishment from the exterior, which is going to be helpful for police and anyone else for enforcement. Of course, the need will never arise, but it's helpful.
Ed?
Yeah, is Cranberry Jewelers, will they be
They're changing locations to a smaller space,
okay.
not
So-
within the building.
So the big blank space between original space and the parking lot on the drawing,
So not included in any of our operational activity. We
Okay.
really just got it for the patio out front. So we may put like paper storage or something like that in there, but nothing for guests,
okay, so that, but you're leasing that area?
starting March 1st, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else, Ed?
Nope.
Joe?
Sorry, just to follow up on that, though, is there an intention to store alcohol or anything in that area there?
Okay. No other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck with it.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Moving on then to E is vote for seasonal lodging house license. Michael?
I move that we approve the seasonal lodging house license 2020 DZ Hospitality LLC DBA Handkerchief Shoals Inn, 888 Route 28, South Harwich.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Anyone from the audience care to weigh in? If not, Joe, before I move on,
No, just staff recommends approval.
we've had motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, it's unanimous. Next on the agenda is possible vote to recommend Article 20 regarding amendment to the agreement between the towns of Chatham and Harwich.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would just note that that's meant to be XX, not Roman numerals. In this case, we haven't numbered them yet. I made the same mistake with staff.
Okay? I'll take that correction. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'd be disappointed if I didn't have a couple of things to bring up. One's a housekeeping one, 3D. A chairperson or vice chair shall be elected from the regional district. When you get down, it's one of the highlighted changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you get down to the 6th line, other town is just hanging out there as a sentence fragment.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 3, Roman numeral 3, D, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, very beginning of the line.
Scott, you want to come to the table?
You've got everything X'd out prior to that, which creates a sentence fragment in this.
I can look at. So are you on the red line version or our final draft?
Red line version.
Okay, so final draft is what we actually voted to approve. We didn't vote to approve a red line version. We
We don't have
provided.
that.
It was included in your packet.
Or was it?
It's online on the, because I actually looked at it.
I'm looking at what was included in the packet, so.
I'm only looking at a red line version,
Yeah.
not final. And if we are going to look at a final, I'd like to see what changed, which I
That's
think I'm seeing
interesting.
what changed.
I think I had both versions, red line and the second one.
Can I just go through some of these? Because
Please,
if that's
yeah.
if that's going, that's fine.
So in the final draft, those sort of the 2 cents, that sentence says the committee will have, as a standard practice, the position of chairperson will rotate annually between the 2-member towns, period, and then it starts up by a 2/3 vote is where the next
So
sentence
the
begins.
rotation sequence is gone too, that sentence?
Yeah, so I think that last line in the red line that's highlighted in yellow should have
A red line
had
through
red
it.
line going through it as well.
We do have the final draft after that.
Yeah, we do.
And-
If you continue on, Don, you'll see it goes into the final. If you continue paging,
Only went to the sections that were listed first. Any,
shows up on mine, the number, page 48.
well, that was the value of the red line. Yeah. We were supposed to see what was going out, what was coming in, and
So there was-
then look at, but if it's not consistent, we're not getting that.
I apologize.
Okay. Jack wanted to say something? I've got 2 other issues here.
Are those copies available? I'd like to get them in the hands of my team if I could.
How many?
Thanks, Scott.
Is there any
7.
chance of doing another red line that is actually a final, so that we can see what's
Sure
going
enough.
out, what's coming in?
Be happy
Because
to.
that was the whole point of the red line.
Of course.
We were operating in a vacuum. 4F, Roman numeral 4.
Page 3 of the final.
I'm just wondering if you're changing this, why you, because we had that hubbub a couple of years ago about the elementary school. Why you wouldn't change that and say that consistent with section 6 amendments below? Because you could conceivably change the configuration of the elementary school by voting this section to radically alter the grade structure. make it K through 3, or 3 through 5?
So, Roman numeral 4, Part F, that's from the original regional agreement.
Oh, I
And
get
so,
that.
and you're referring to, after that, what?
The mechanism for amendments for the elementary schools.
I think.
16
Yeah,
is
so
amendments.
I think that this is just getting at, when we regionalized, the middle school was a 5 through 7. And, yeah, so I think this, one of the things I want to emphasize to the boards and whoever's listening out there is, the regional agreement's very clear that the district will maintain an elementary school in each town. Whether it makes sense at some point that grade 5 is back in an elementary school, which many elementary schools are pre-K through 5 or some pre-K through 6, and that grade 8, which is currently at the high school, stays at the high school, as opposed to many middle schools have grade 8 that might be a grade 6 through 8, so that, that the agreement allows for flexibility to where the grade configurations can be. And I think that's what that line F is just trying to get at.
First of all, I did understand that had been there, but I figured if you were going to the trouble of amending the agreement, if you had something that could be read two ways, this might be your opportunity to fix it. It does say elementary, though, / secondary. I mean, you could conceivably go K through 3 if that's what you wanted to do. And that is not consistent with the amendments section.
Where's what's the amendment section?
That's the one we had the discussion about 2 years ago.
I know,
about
but where is it?
It's in section Roman numeral
Page 10 of the
16.
new document.
Roman numeral 16.
Page 10 of the new document.
Yes, page 10 on the new document. I mean, it's just a thought, because it seems to be you're empowering yourself in one spot to do something that another place in the agreement says requires the town meeting to do.
I don't think it's an intention of trying to empower us to do without town meeting vote. I think when this was originally crafted, it's what Dr. Carpenter was mentioning, was that so initially, when the region was put together, there was the conversation of the 8th grade going at the high school versus at the middle school. And that was one of the first decisions that the interim school committee made, was to have that 8th grade go to the high school in order to create the population. So I don't think it's trying to
Interestingly,
Contradict?
it does not talk to the high school in this sentence.
well, secondary is high school. Secondary is not elementary, so secondary would be
anything above.
anything not elementary. So it depends, I mean, you can even look around the Cape as to what elementary schools are.
By saying elementary, secondary, it covers the district with language
Right.
all the way pre-K to 12.
Well, what I was suggesting is perhaps putting in consistent with section 16 amendments below would at least refer you to the, because there's certain things arguably, I mean, I think we could both agree, there's certain things arguably you cannot do without a town meeting vote. There are other things you can do.
Correct.
I don't think anywhere in here, so if you go back to section 4, letter D, I think that might be where part of the confusion would be, and C and D, because it says that the elementary will serve those grades, K through 4. Part D says the middle high schools shall serve, so that would have been, if we said middle high schools, i.e. secondary, serve students grades 5 through 12. And I think that's what section F is alluding to by saying at the discretion, the committee can change that grade configuration without necessarily an amendment.
again, clarifying,
And there's no plan.
There's no
There's no
plan to-
conversation.
Well, I think Don raised this interesting, just, Don's paid more attention than I have, but it looks like on section C and D that you just referred to, you made specific, that's very specific, and you're arguing that you're not trying to make it somewhat non-specific to give you some range of latitude. So why are those two statements so specific then? Isn't that counterproductive to just listening to your discussion?
Honestly, it made perfect sense to me reading it by what we do all the time with middle and high school and
Right.
secondary, that I didn't even think twice about it. And because that was the language in the original regional agreement,
Yeah.
we thought it was okay. And again, because it's something that we deal with, calling a secondary school
Well, you
a
know much more,
secondary
I'm
school.
just listening to this discussion. and it's
Right, no, and
counted in two different ways.
Well, interestingly, it looked like it was flagged, because on the border, it's got a slash mark that would indicate that it was amended somehow, but
And I think we have
that's
to,
kind of what drew my attention to it.
I think we have to keep in mind the history of this is the initial regional agreement was put out there for two communities to understand what this new region would look like as they're coming together. One of the things that we were trying to do in this revision is remove a lot of the regionalization, stuff that was just purely had to do with regionalization that's now sort of obsolete, and just kind of clearing that out of the document.
I get that, but a sales point for both of the towns to enter into the agreement was, you're gonna have your own elementary school.
and that line is there.
I get that, but it also allows you to change the configuration of it without, it just seems like it does. If you
It-
look at language, I mean, I used to deal with contracts all the time. If you can have,
yeah.
if you can have two interpretations of a contract clause,
I
one
understand.
it doesn't matter whether one's more reasonable or not, it just is if you can come up with another interpretation.
Well, we've probably carried this as far as we can tonight. Do you want to take another stab at that, or to clarify that a bit, or where are you?
At this point, it's been voted on by our committee and the Chatham Board of Selectmen
Okay.
as is. I don't know what the process would be for us to be able to do it again prior to being finalized in
Right.
the warrants.
I
Okay.
do have one substantive question beyond that, though. Even though they did vote on that, we still have to.
Of course.
You added on a lot of language on section 9 for capital costs. And in that, I mean, I can understand, we had this discussion earlier. I can understand when you're building a building, that the building and all the accoutrement that you're getting, you'd wrap into the SBA loan and open up a brand-new place. But subsequent to that, this thing is actually holding out the thought that all the furnishings, presumably desks, would be capital costs.
And I guess.
New language.
Yeah, so to be clear, the way we do our budget presentations is anything that involves our facilities and our budget presentations comes under our capital in the budget presentation. So an example that's very Harwich Elementary School specific, we put in, and this would be the biggest project we've had in elementary school. We put in a new flooring system in Harwich Elementary School and did a major renovation in the cafeteria space at Harwich Elementary School. That was
That's part of the
yeah,
real
that was-
property.
Yeah, so that was capital. It was in our budget presentations as capital, and it was assessed as this is spelled out as capital. So it was assessed based on the foundation enrollment of the school district.
But that's commonly held as being capital. I'm just saying, say you wanted to re-outfit 2 classrooms,
Yeah.
40 desks, that's capital?
It's in MSBA, as Ed knows, in the way the MSBA construction projects go, your FF&E, your furnitures, fixtures, and equipment shows up as part of those big projects.
If you wanted to do 40 desks for 2 classrooms, that would be capital?
It could be. I think, I think something along the lines of 40 desks we would build into annual budgets within the building, the building's, sort of principals line on, we have, occasionally we'll have like a classroom that's gonna need, an extra desk, so those purchases of extra desks show up in the budget as, as items that are being purchased, and oftentimes they're under a principal's account where they, we're gonna need 5 more desks here, 5 more desks there.
This is your language, and it's not saying that. It says, including without limitation the cost of, and you struck the word original. So it's not for anything new or expanded. Including without limitation the cost of equipment and furnishings for such school buildings or additions plans. It seems to indicate that furnishings, whether they're for an addition or not, are capital outlay. That's the new language.
Right, and I guess what I would stress when, again, there's no plans to build a new school, but when you build a new school, your FF&E, which are those furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, is part of that capital outlay that, the way the state
So
building
you're
authority
using
does it.
terminology you're used to use.
But also, earlier on in this, Scott's correct in that, it really references, either a major reconstruction or a new construction, that would be included in it. So, if you had a situation where, as you just pointed out, you were just looking for 40 desks, I think that would be considered separate from what this is stating, Don. At least that's the way I read it. If you look at the beginning of that paragraph, it defines that it's the cost of constructing, reconstructing, or adding to a school building or buildings, the cost of remodeling or making extraordinary repairs. And then it adds to that, potentially, the furnishings,
Yeah.
if it's part of that. So,
I'll also point this out, that should we buy the desks out of the operational budget, that the operational part of our budget is assessed the exact same way as capital's defined here. So
Doesn't have
it
an
becomes 6 of
impact.
this
Right.
and a half dozen of the other.
Okay,
But
let's
I do
move,
understand where
let's move
we're
on.
getting at.
Jack, you got a comment on this?
At this point, I don't think so, Randy.
Okay. Is there any more,
Is there anything that got changed, though, from the red line version to the final version? Because there is that one thing. Is there anything else?
There shouldn't be, unless there's some other stray thing, but I know that Nancy and my assistant went over line by line, trying to have them match up as best as possible.
Ed?
So, where in the document you mentioned earlier, it says that each town will have an elementary school?
Under section 5, part B, there shall be no less than 1 elementary school in each member town.
And to change that would be town meeting to.
And that would be, to change this, would have to go through the same process that we're going through to change this now, which is school committee, each selectman, and town meeting approval.
And elementary school can be defined as it is currently K through 4, or it may drop to K through 3 because of God knows what, but, yeah,
It's not.
Yeah.
We don't want
Well, I
anybody
mean-
thinking that's,
no, but I mean, in cases of a disaster and the new tech school burns down and we get all those kids back to the high school, everything shoves down,
we might need to make
yeah. God
elementary
knows
school
what's
K
going to
through 6,
happen.
or
You
K
have to
through 5.
retain some level of flexibility in the language we have.
Our ask tonight is we've been discussing, we want to vote to recommend this as a town warrant article. Ed?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we recommend the draft document as presented to be presented to town meeting for approval.
Is there a second? been voted and second. Is there any more discussion? Don, of course.
I'm not gonna vote against it, but I'm not gonna vote for it either, because I don't have a red line final version. Even though the other thing was final text, I'd have to read them word by word, side by side, to even figure out what got added and what got deleted. If this red line version was exactly the same, then I would have voted for it.
Can I
Right, yes.
I will make a promise to you, Mr. Howell, that Ms. Tambolio and I will sit down again, and I read one and she followed along with the other, and,
Bring Mr.
Clerical area.
Microsoft with you, it might be easier.
what, I'm sorry?
Bring Mr. Microsoft with you, it
I
might
wish.
be easier to track changes.
I wish. But we will
Okay.
go through it one more time, and we will ensure that there is nothing other than that one line that should be crossed out, difference between the two.
Michael and then Mary will get to you.
Thank you. You answered my question. If you could please just get the board what actually changed. I'm not interested in holding this up for a couple letters and a sentence.
We thought
But
we did.
Please forward that to us.
Thought we did.
Mary?
Very easy solution. All you have to do is, in Microsoft Track, the red line changes to your original document. A red line version, in my own opinion, shouldn't come from two people reading the document. It should be an electronic version that you take the newest version, you compare it to the prior version. It's done every day by contract lawyers, day in and day out. So it shouldn't be so time consuming that two people are reading them side by side. It should be automatic. And if there's a problem with that not working
volunteer.
correctly, then you sit side by side. But it should be a 30-second track changes that covers it for you.
That was kind of what my joke was.
Well,
You
I
hit
think that's
under
what happened the initial, but then we were trying to be extra sure to make sure, and apparently we failed our extra
Okay.
sure.
Well, if you can do that for us,
Okay.
we'll set this. We've had a vote and a motion and a second. Had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? One abstention? Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a discussion and vote to submit the fiscal year 2021 budget from us to the Finance Committee. Joe?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in accordance with the requirements of the Harwich Charter, Chapter 9-3-2, the board must vote on or before the fourth Tuesday of February to submit a final budget to the Finance Committee. So it's a perfunctory motion by the board to do exactly that.
Yeah, Ed?
Mr. Chair, I move that we submit the current FY 2021 budget to the Finance Committee for their review.
The second, okay. Any more discussion? Michael?
Just that Joe just used the word final. We've had one shot at this budget, and not even a big shot at this budget.
No, it's a draft, right?
Well, he just used the word final.
So the charter says submit final budget to Finance Committee. However, it's also understood that you're going to go, and I'm going to talk about it next in the TA report, there's going to be a series of opportunities, not including them, the least of which is the March 7th event, where the board is actively involved with the Finance Committee. The final budget occurs at the end of March. But this is consistent with language in the charter, so I didn't want to change it.
You raise a good point, Michael, 'cause this is not final in my mind, but.
I'm not comfortable with saying final, but I'll
Charter
vote.
says it. I mean,
If you, my motion said current budget.
Yeah, he didn't say final,
I didn't say final.
because he knew.
I like the current budget. Okay, any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
We have still some explaining to
We
do.
do. Okay, moving on to town administrator reports.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as I just mentioned, you would have had delivered this afternoon by staff, next to your meeting agenda, the present agenda for the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee Joint Budget Presentation Hearings, which is scheduled for Saturday, March 7th, 2020, here in the Griffin Room from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can see that this is the roster as we being the finance director, myself, and staff have presently. I also want to remind the board, as I mentioned during the delivery of the budget message, that departments that may not have otherwise presented at this event have been given time if they have been impacted by budget cuts directed by the acting town administrator to the board. So you'll see that they've been given time as well, as was promised to them.
And Joe, just to, I know you're doing this, but just to confirm that you're posting this for both us and the Finance Committee.
Say that again?
This is being posted for both us and the
Correct.
Finance
Yep.
Committee. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
And then, if I may, Mr. Chairman, under, continuing on the report, the budget warrant timeline for fiscal year 2021, and this goes to Selectman McCaskill's comment earlier. On Monday, March 9th, there's a joint budget and article hearing, the first of several between the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, so that's a joint meeting, March 9th, where you'll have a chance to go over both budget and warrant article items.
Okay.
And again, with the goal of Monday, March 23rd being final actions and signatures by the board to close out the warrants.
Thank you, Joe.
And then the only other item I have is just to alert the town through the selectmen that we were advised last week by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission that the seasonal liquor licenses have been sent to the town, working with staff, and we'll begin the renewal process starting next week.
Okay.
So those packets will be sent out to all licensees tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Selectmen's reports, Don, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this flows perfectly. From the time of MMA forward, everybody's been talking about NIPS, and one of the solutions was 5% deposit, although I'm not convinced that that's going to change the trash trail at all, because they're so easy to just toss. I'd like to just broach this because it hasn't been brought up publicly. Can we ask legal counsel for an opinion about whether we can condition a package store license? Could have sworn I heard music. If we can condition the renewal or issuance of a license on the exclusion of NIPS, and what that language might look like if it's legally possible to do that, because now would be the time to do it.
I see Joe writing notes, so I assume that he'll be following up.
Everybody was concerned because the deposit would have to go to the legislature, then you'd have to, and then you'd have to hope that even if the legislature agrees to it, that 5%, 5 cents is enough of a deterrent in order to stop you from just tossing it out your window.
Yeah.
Lest anybody think that we're just trying to regulate away someone's ability to carry that with them. Until the advent of these small plastic bottles, there were flasks and other mechanisms. It's not like you're taking away the opportunity for a smaller quantity.
Okay, thank you, Don. Ed?
Jesus. I went blank.
Speechless.
No, I understand that there's been a proposal for a non-binding question ballot measure submitted regarding the nuclear power plant.
I heard that on actually on the radio today, but I don't have no knowledge of that
Okay.
myself.
No.
Maybe Joe
So
does.
the staff did receive a petition. It is not a petitioned article, so it's handled differently, but would be a non-binding referendum type question to appear on the town ballot. It will come before the board, and it's not required to be placed on the ballot by the board, unlike a warrant article where the board has no discretion. So it is going to be incorporated in some of the discussions you'll be having in March for the warrant as to whether or not you include that question. You have greater latitude on the inclusion of the question and perhaps even in some degree the language of the question itself. But even though it was petitioned to the board, it is not a requirement of the board,
Okay.
unlike the warrant articles.
Okay, Ed.
I just would like to be sure that we have that discussion. I think it's an important matter for us to allow voters to have a crack at. And there was a second matter, but it's gone.
We're still in session, so if it comes back, just yell. Michael?
Jesus.
I'm not sure what Don asked, but maybe somebody could just send that out tomorrow. Are we looking to ask the legislature or ask ABCC, or ask somebody if we can not
Our lawyer.
sell nips?
Our lawyer, if we could,
If I
conditional license that excludes the sale of nips within the license issuance,
And were you thinking, you might be thinking something that we do this year
possibly.
without public hearings and public outcry, and some people love their nips and don't throw
Well,
them out.
why don't we
the window?
start with, is it even possible?
Okay. And then
I'm
I
not
guess
sure when this would happen.
I read
second,
it as just an initial question.
second and more important is the budget. So we have our first crack at this on the 7th, which for those of us who have participated in the Saturday meetings, it's a rush and there's not a lot of time to dive into a lot of questions because one comes right after the other. And then we're gonna have another meeting on the 9th, and then the final has to be sent in by the 23rd, Joe?
There's a little cushion in that, if you will. I think the deadline would absolutely be about March 30th to get it sealed and to printer and everybody else.
Okay.
But that is the latest, and that's a little bit concerning.
So concerning for me is the lack of looking at the school. Is the school gonna come back before us? And I don't need to debate this now, but if I read it correctly, the school came in at 2.66%. The rest of our department heads lost budget or came in 2 or under 2, obviously, to get to where we got. Are we gonna have another crack at the school to talk about their budget? It's on the Harwich side, $25 million and 2.66%. Whilst the rest of the department heads are bleeding, it seems that we need to have a more serious conversation. And I think specifically, Joe, just if somebody could answer for me, the original budget proposal showed a 6% increase in healthcare. 6% didn't go up. We had no increase in healthcare, nor
Correct.
did the school. And they took that 6% after our budget presentation and put it into curriculum and didn't give it back.
If I remember correctly, the school department had budgeted for a 5% increase. The conversation I had with the superintendent 2 weeks ago was that there was a remaining 1%. So 4% did go to offset their budget increase. The remaining 1% was reallocated to curriculum. We did have a frank conversation about our operating budget and the impacts on staff and departments. It's my understanding that the final presentation by the school committee was the following week, and they opted to retain that for curriculum. So they did do some of the expected increase that did not occur. They did put that back to the budget, but not the full amount and not what was requested by staff.
My ask is that we give them some time, maybe have a conversation, see where the whole board is at, and give them some time to adjust it before we put it on the agenda and vote it one night. Because as of now, I'm a no vote.
So they do have the obligation through their agreement to submit their line item budget by Friday. So we will have that information as well.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Michael mainly because, so the public can be reminded of this, there's no correlation to the enrollment in this budget. The enrollment actually went down. So this budget, it's hard to get your hands around exactly why. I mean, because the enrollment went down, the percentage cost between the two towns is always fluctuating in any given year. But there needs to be some sort of discussion about it, because I was kind of stunned. I didn't realize that there was never going to be an opportunity ever for money to be turned back at the end of a year. I mean, that was pretty clearly stated the last time they came, that the
Joe, let me,
dollar was a mistake. They shouldn't have done anything.
I understand Joe's comment, they have a final budget on Friday. Joe, could you invite them to just give us a brief update of what they're
Sure.
thinking
Would
is
you
on
like me to
that?
reach out for the 2nd or any other meeting in March?
Well, not this, we're not sure about the 2nd, right?
I'm not.
Yeah, 'cause you're not-
That's
Yeah.
the week after that.
Well, if I could, there are required items that need to take place on March 9th. There are no required items for March 16th, meaning we might have more flexibility in
Do
time
the
on the
16th
16th.
then, is okay.
I can try for either one.
Right. I would say the 16th then.
Are they still able to make adjustments in their budget at this point, or did they vote on their final budget themselves? I mean, is there something that could actually happen as a result of our discussion with them? Or are they gonna say to us, well, sorry, you know, we already
I
voted?
think they're okay until they get to town meeting.
Correct.
Okay, you know, because, as Michael pointed out, I mean, we did have some questions when they were here that have not been answered. So, you know, those at the very least need to be answered, and I'm sure, you know, upon having time to look at that budget, which we didn't before we had them sit before us. I mean, we had a short period, but not the kind of time we needed. Now we've had that, I think it's very appropriate we have a chance to have a discussion with them.
Okay.
The other thing that I just wanted to add with Ed, that I am aware of this petition on the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant. It mainly relates, as I understand it, to indicating to the governor that they want safety procedures to be the greatest possible safety procedures that can be put in place at Pilgrim, which relates to how they contain the waste at the site. So I think we ought to take it seriously and let the voters of the town have a chance to look at it too.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Jack, you want to take your shot?
Sure. I'm looking at this timeline. I'm saying to myself, when can FinCom get started? You know, tonight we were supposed to have the articles submitted to us according to the schedule. Tonight we were supposed to have the final budget figures from the selectmen to the finance committee, according to this document
Which we
that
just voted.
we're trying to use.
You can work off of that.
Pardon?
We just voted that. You can work off that that budget.
The warrant was,
It sounds like a budget to me.
the warrant was transmitted to the finance committee. I thought it was ahead of your meeting last week.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who were we supposed to talk to last week?
I think it was voted, Jack, at the meeting you were at last week.
This meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as far as my recollection of the past few years, Jack, is the board has had suggestions on the budget right up until town meeting. So certainly the finance committee isn't being held up by the board now to start working. We may disagree with you, but I think that's part of.
Well, I don't mind this interest, but we'll get there. I'm also saying that on the 28th of February, this says the school district will submit the final line item budget to your committee and ours. So that's just a few days away.
Right, and that's what Joe referred to. We should
Well-
get that this week,
On Friday.
on Friday.
I have, yeah,
Hopefully with the answers that Stephen was asking.
I don't feel, maybe I'm wrong about all of this, but I don't feel like we have any data yet. I don't have a thicket of articles. I don't have the latest updated budget, I don't think. I've not been given it. I had to ask for the school number tonight.
Steve?
Well, you actually weren't here,
No.
but we voted to give them the budget last week, right?
Well, last week was to send the warrant articles. The budget was presented the previous week by the finance director.
Joe, could you just double check and be
Sure,
sure that that's
absolutely.
all sent to
That it
Jack?
got transmitted,
Say again?
that it got transmitted.
It was, correct, yeah.
Carol is going to send that electronically.
Maybe it
wasn't
did, maybe it just hasn't got to the right place, Jack, but it should.
That's possible.
Michael?
I did. We all got an email with finance committee,
Yeah.
every member in it, and
Yeah.
it said the budget books are ready.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
So am I.
So you're saying you have no budget? Both of you are saying you have
I
no
have the
budget?
nice booklet that Carol put together.
Yep.
That was very informative, very useful. What I don't know, because it came in my mail, I don't know whether it's right up to the moment or what.
That book, Jack, the one down this one
This-
right
this
here?
book right here?
Book, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the budget.
That's the budget.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
That's up to the moment.
Tom, you didn't know that?
it? It's actually analogous to what we used to be doing like 5, 6, 7 years ago. That thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, Ed?
Well, excuse me.
Okay, well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
I think we're at cross purposes here a little bit right now.
Yeah, we'll need to work on it. Okay.
Well,
Ed?
you know, we all remember several years ago, we changed the charter and moved back the dates that these things were doing because the belief was that we were rushing everything up front by having the budget come in January, and the articles come in at the beginning of January. Well, we've moved them back, and all we've really done is then compress the
Compress it.
time we have to review it.
Mhm.
You know, we were, you know, and I think we were probably better off having the requirement that the stuff came in earlier.
Yep. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Joe?
Can I just ask clarification from the board? Were you looking for a joint meeting between the school committee and the board?
Yeah. Steve, anything else?
That's all I have.
And
Uh,
I do
Ed?
remember,
Okay.
we all got these nice brown envelopes with 3 proposals in it. Am I to assume that we're scheduled to
We'll
consider
schedule
these
those next week.
next week? Okay,
Next week.
that was the question.
Yeah, this is information that we didn't make any time, obviously, to do it now, but they'll be invited in. We'll discuss it next week, be on the agenda. I just did have one last comment. You know, it's this Thursday at, Sharon, this Thursday at 6 o'clock at the Station Avenue Elementary School cafeteria. We'll have a 3-town meeting concerning the Dennis, Harwich, Yarmouth wastewater discussion, and specifically an update of where we are in the agreement, and some ideas, I think, of where we, what actions we need to go, to continue on that discussion.
This Thursday?
This Thursday.
Yarmouth.
At Yarmouth, at the Station Avenue Elementary School.
And
Okay.
Don won't be there.
I'll be sleeping.
And Don will be
So
sleeping.
we need board members. Motion to adjourn?
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.